What would you say is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar? Yom Kippur? You know, that time where we don't eat anything and sit in synagogue all day praying? Sounds pretty holy and spiritual to me, right? Well, a 16th century rabbi known by the name the Arizal pointed out something hidden within the words of the holiday Yom Kippur. Something really eye-opening. He noticed that if you look at the name Yom Kippur in the Torah, it's Yom HaKippurim, literally the Day of Atonements. But if you separate out the words, it can be read as Yom HaKippurim, literally the day that is like Purim. In other words, the holiness and spiritual elevation of Yom Kippur is only like that of Purim. Purim is actually the holiest day of the Jewish year. What? You heard me. But what's so special about Purim? What is it about Purim that warrants it being the holiest Jewish day? Purim is a day of fun and festivity. We recall how Queen Esther saved the Jews of Persia from the evil decrees of the despotic ruler Haman. And we celebrate, we dress up, and we drink. It all seems very light-hearted. In fact, the Hebrew month of Adar, which Purim falls in, is associated with laughter. Purim is the holiday of laughter. So what, I ask you, is so holy about laughter? The answer? Everything. Laughter is fundamental to Jewish philosophy. In fact, the very first Jewish child is called Yitzchak, Isaac, which means literally, he shall laugh. Why? Well, have you ever wondered, what is it that makes us laugh? What is it about a punchline that is so funny? We laugh when we see something that appears to be going in one direction, and then suddenly it turns the opposite way. Consider the joke about the wife who calls up his husband, telling him to be careful because she's heard on the radio that there's a madman on the motorway driving on the wrong side of the road. Madman, the husband tells her, there's hundreds of them. This joke makes us laugh because we don't expect the husband to be the madman. We laugh when the totally unexpected occurs. That's what a punchline is, when things are going in one direction and then suddenly they change into their opposite. But in Judaism, we believe that everything that exists in the physical world represents a deeper spiritual reality. So what does laughter represent? At its deepest level, laughter represents the transition from this world to the next world, from despair to redemption, and from our current world to the messianic vision of the world which Jews pray for every day. Jews have a deep conviction that all tragedy and despair will one day flip itself into redemption, and it's that flip which we associate with laughter. Take life itself. We all go through ups and downs in life, but for all of us, we end up growing old, weary, and dying. From our perspective down here on earth, it all seems rather tragic. But in Judaism, we consider this world to be a temporary place of growth and ordeal, which transitions to an eternal place of rest, where we reap the rewards of our spiritual and moral growth. From a spiritual perspective, it's not tragic at all. In fact, one could even say it's quite funny. You know, the famous 12th century Jewish philosopher Moses Maimonides, the Rambam, was confronted by some Greek philosophers. They said to him, "You Jews claim to believe that death is merely a transition to an eternal life, but you also say that everything in the physical world represents a spiritual reality. So where can we find in the physical world the phenomenon of death leading to life?" they asked. A pretty good question. I bet you didn't get that homework question in your Jewish studies class. So Maimonides responded by saying that we see that death leads to life at the very moment where life in this world begins. Consider the existence of the child in the mother's womb. It has a hole in its heart, it lives underwater, its lungs are all scrunched up and not functioning, it receives all its nutrition from its mother, it's literally living in the opposite circumstances to what it would need to survive outside the womb. If the child were conscious inside the womb, as far as it was concerned, life outside the womb means death. And yet, when the child is born, everything reverses. The hole in the heart fills up, the lungs pop open, the blood travels the other way, and the baby starts breathing. This doesn't strike me as a natural logical progression of steps. Everything suddenly flips into its opposite at the last second. At the moment where life begins, said Maimonides, we see how a hopeless, fatal situation can transform itself in a split second. This principle, that bad can transform itself into good, is a deep conviction of how Jews perceive human history too. We believe that one day the world will be transformed from a world of chaos and despair to one of peace and contentment. And it will happen at the least expected moment, where all seems lost in the world. King David wrote that on that day, quote, our mouths will be filled with laughter, because we laugh when an unexpected transition occurs. And we see this principle on a smaller level play itself out in the Purim story. Everything was going wrong. There was an irreversible decree of genocide for the Jewish people. And yet, through one coincidence after the next, the evil Haman ended up being hung on the very gallows that he had built to hang Mordecai, the leader of the Jews. Everything reversed itself. This is the Jewish view of history and of life. The question is, though, whether you are able to hold on in the moments of darkness. Throughout history, Jews and peoples of all faith have been ridiculed for their enduring belief in divine guidance and their moral values, which have so often flied in the face of the cultures they found themselves in. But they were able to remain true to their values because they lived with the reality that one day, when the world gets turned around, they will be the right way up. Isaac, Yitzchak, the first Jewish child, means he shall laugh, because that is what we're awaiting. We as Jews haven't laughed much throughout our history, but it's the future laugh, the last laugh, that we are waiting for. The holiness of Purim is the holiness of laughter. Deep within it is found the secret for Jewish hope throughout our history. It is the knowledge that the final destination for humanity is not one of sorrow, it is one of joy and redemption.